Gunfire echoed through the pine trees as smoke grenades hissed across the training field, and AK-9 unit barked ferociously at a padded decoy sprinting between rusted-out school buses. In the middle of this high-stress police training zone, an RV door suddenly swung open and a furious woman in pink leopard print pajamas stepped out, blender in hand, screaming above the chaos. "Hey idiots, keep it down, some of us are trying to make smoothies." This moment was so absurd, so wildly off-script, that every single officer on the course momentarily paused. Not because of the yelling, but because no one had any clue who this woman was or how she had managed to set up camp right in the middle of Zone 9's live-fire simulation field. It was the kind of moment that made you want to hit rewind on reality and figure out where exactly things went wrong. 48 hours earlier, everything had been normal. I had just wrapped up a consultation gig with the Department of Homeland Security and was on my way back to the compound. Zone 9 wasn't just land to me. It was 12 acres of carefully developed terrain, trench training pits, elevation towers, close-quarters shoot houses, and 2 canine assault courses. What it wasn't was a public campsite. Every inch of it was clearly marked with no trespassing signs, and it had more cameras than a Vegas casino. It was the kind of place people didn't just accidentally wander into. At least, that's what I believed until I drove up the gravel access path and saw the massive silver RV blocking my gate like it was a beach parking lot. At first, I thought maybe it was a mistaken delivery or a construction worker's mobile office. But when I saw the decorative string lights dangling between pine trees, lawn chairs set out on artificial turf, and a wind chime that looked like it came straight off a yoga influencer's Pinterest board, I knew exactly what I was dealing with. A full-blown Karen invasion. The type of person who treated boundaries like suggestions and consequences like conspiracy theories. My gut twisted as I got out of my truck and approached the RV door. I knocked 3 times. No answer. I knocked again. Then, the window cracked open, and a head full of frizzed-out blonde hair peeked through. Her oversized sunglasses were perched like a crown of entitlement, and her voice oozed manufactured politeness laced with passive aggression. "Yes, can I help you?" "I'm about to ask you the same thing," I said calmly. "This is private property. You're trespassing." "Actually, I'm not," she chirped. "I checked Google Maps. There's no fence. That means it's unclaimed land. First come, first serve. That's how the RV life works. Maybe read a little more about public land use before you accuse people next time." I stared at her in disbelief. Did she just Google Maps herself into a federal-grade training zone? She waved at me and shut the window like the conversation was over. I radioed my assistant, James, who was already on site setting up for the tactical weekend training course. He came rolling up in his ATV, saw the RV, and just laughed the kind of dry, tired laugh that said we'd seen this kind of stupid before, just not this stupid. "She say she's camping," James said. "Thinks this is a boho retreat." Boho retreat with fake IEDs buried under the sand pit and a sniper tower 30 feet from her hammock. "You want me to call the sheriff's office?" James asked. "Not yet. Let's give her a chance to move before it turns into a scene." Spoiler alert. She didn't move. In fact, when we returned the next morning, she had expanded. Now there was a makeshift welcome mat, a portable solar panel set up on a tripod, and a decorative sign stuck in the dirt that read "Peace, Love, and Free Parking." She'd even put up a tiny flag with a lotus on it like she was claiming her new kingdom. Training was scheduled to begin at noon. Officers from 3 departments were on the way. Some were driving in from as far as Austin. This wasn't just a couple of guys practicing with paintball guns. These were state-certified tactical units, some of them with federal clearance, here for stress immersion drills. And Karen's RV was dead center in our simulation route. I knocked again, less politely this time. "Look," I said, "we're running a live training exercise today. You can't be here. It's not safe." She opened the door with a protein shake in hand and a face that could curdle milk. "I told you already I'm not leaving. If you don't want visitors, maybe try putting up a rail gate." And if this is some kind of gun club or militia thing, I'll be reporting you. Good day. That's when I realized she had no idea who we were. Not rogue militia. Not hobbyists. But certified trainers for state and federal law enforcement. And she was standing on a property with active licenses for tactical simulations that included flashbangs and helicopter flyovers. Her denial was going to run headfirst into reality, and soon. James whispered, "Should we cancel the course?" "Absolutely not," I said. "Let's proceed. Just make sure she's out of the blast radius." Of course she wasn't. When the drills began, she kept filming. Loudspeaker announcements echoed through the trees. Teams practiced shield wall formations. A mock hostage situation unfolded near the treeline. Karen sat in her lawn chair, arms crossed, sipping her shake and glaring like someone had dared put extra foam in her latte. That's when things got surreal. She made a sign that read "noise complaint filed" and duct-taped it to the side of her RV. She started live streaming herself narrating the quote military aggression happening around her. Her followers cheered her on in the comment. One even suggested she bring out incense to ward off the bad vibe. She actually did it. Then came the moment that kicked off the disaster. One of the K-9 units barked too close. Karen thought the officers were sending dogs to intimidate her. She stormed out mid-drill and screamed about her rights. That's when she got caught in the smoke line of a simulated breach and started coughing on camera while yelling that she was being gassed. The video went viral before lunch. Within an hour, we had a Channel 4 news van pulling up at the edge of the property asking about rogue training camps and civilian intimidation. That's when the sheriff finally arrived and tried to reason with her. She handed him a document she printed from the internet titled "Emergency Homestead Right." I watched the sheriff read the first line, lower the paper, and say, "You made this yourself, didn't you?" She blinked like that was a trick question. It was only day one, and we were already fielding angry tweets from keyboard activists and calls from people asking if we were harboring a domestic terror unit. Meanwhile, all we wanted was to run a standard training exercise without someone sunbathing under the obstacle tower. But the worst part, Karen still hadn't realized where she was. Not metaphorically. Literally. She thought she had discovered a hidden campground. She didn't know it was a restricted compound for training officers in hostage rescue, tactical coordination, and riot containment. She didn't know we had full legal jurisdiction. She didn't know our training had been contracted by state law enforcement. She didn't know yet. But she was about to find out. And I was going to let the lesson be taught not by me, but by the drills. Because nothing says wake-up call like a flashbang bouncing off your Zen garden while a team of armored officers storms through your picnic table formation. And that was only the beginning. By the time the smoke cleared from the first set of drills, it was obvious Karen had no intention of moving. If anything, the chaos had only made her more defiant. She doubled down on her belief that she was the one being wronged, claiming in another livestream that she had uncovered a covert paramilitary operation disguised as a training retreat. She called herself a whistleblower and announced to her followers that she would not leave until justice was served. That morning, I woke up to see her video featured on a mid-level influencer news blog with the headline "Woman Exposes Secret Government Militia Operating on Sacred Native Land." I rubbed my eyes and read it again, just to be sure I wasn't hallucinating. The comments section was on fire. Some of her fans were already organizing an RV convoy to come join her peaceful protest. Others accused her of trespassing and called her out for her habit of squatting in unauthorized places. But Karen ignored the backlash. She sat in her hammock, sipping a turmeric latte and writing hand-lettered protest signs with words like "No bullets, no borders, and silence is violence." One of my instructors passed by and asked if we should stop the drills to avoid legal trouble. I told him flatly, if we stop now, we set a precedent. Let her call every media station in the country. We're still within our rights, and we're not backing down over a woman who thinks military surplus smoke grenades are part of a conspiracy. Around noon, she approached us wearing what I can only describe as her press conference outfit. It was a long flowing shawl, patterned pants, and a headband with beads dangling like wind chimes. She carried a phone on a selfie stick and filmed every step of her walk toward our mobile command tent. She opened with a speech about land sovereignty and said she had spoken to a friend who was an attorney, though it was later discovered that her so-called attorney was a tarot card reader from Phoenix with a podcast. Karen then handed me a printed sheet of paper that looked official at first glance. I took it, glanced at the top, and immediately saw the watermark from a free legal template website. It was titled Declaration of Temporary Civilian Occupation and made up entirely of legal-sounding gibberish about citizens' rights, freedom of movement, and the right to unclaimed wilderness. I asked her if she genuinely believed this gave her ownership of restricted land. She said she did. In fact, she said if I didn't respect it, she would consider me a threat to her well-being and file a harassment suit. Then she reached into her shawl and pulled out a tiny recorder, holding it close to my face and saying loudly for the audio record, "This is the man who's trying to evict a peaceful woman from her sacred healing retreat." I waved over James, who was trying not to laugh as he watched from behind the drone control station. She turned her recorder toward him and asked if he had anything to say to the public. He smiled politely and said, "Yep. You're standing on a landmine zone." Then he pointed to the sign behind her that read Live Ordnance Area No Civilian Access. Her face twitched. For a second I thought we might have gotten through. But then she waved her hand and said, "That's just fear propaganda. You people are addicted to control." That evening we continued training. Karen blasted meditation music from her RV speakers. She also set up a projector and tried to screen a documentary against militarism directly onto the side of her vehicle. The result was unintentionally hilarious, as flashes from our nighttime drills kept interrupting her video. A K-9 team ran drills behind her, barking on cue, while she pretended to ignore them with exaggerated calmness. At one point, one of the dogs barked a little too close and she jumped 6 inches, then immediately turned it into a yoga stretch and said, "I'm grounded. I'm one with the earth." But the real problem began the next morning, when a group of her followers actually showed up. 3 RVs pulled in behind hers before we could block the access road. One of them had a banner on the windshield that said "Resist Militarization." They parked right in front of our emergency vehicle lane and got out with camping gear and protest signs. I couldn't believe it. In less than 3 days, Karen had transformed our training compound into a peace camp occupied by conspiracy influencers. One man set up a crystal grid in front of the rappel tower. Another woman asked if she could burn sage near the firing line to clear the aggressive energy. That was it. I called the sheriff's office. When the deputies arrived, they had to push their way past a man wearing a poncho and banging on a drum. Karen was already mid-speech, live on 3 platforms. She said things like, "We are protectors, not protesters, and they are trying to erase nature with war games." The deputies tried reasoning with her. They explained the trespass laws. They showed her our land documents. She refused to listen. Then she accused the officers of being fake cops in costume. That was a mistake. One of the deputies was a well-known figure in the community and a former detective. He removed his hat, showed her his badge, and calmly asked her to leave. She shouted that she didn't recognize his authority and attempted to perform a citizen citation on him. That's when things went off the rails. As she recited her fake citation, one of her supporters wandered too close to the K-9 training course and set off a motion alarm. The K-9s barked, the trainees responded, and in the chaos, Karen screamed and flailed dramatically before collapsing into her own peace garden and yelling, "This is what trauma looks like." She live-streamed her emotional injuries from a folding chair, complete with dramatic moaning and requests for herbal tea. Meanwhile, we had to delay our drills and evacuate the southern zone to keep her campers from getting hurt. That evening, I gathered the training team and made a decision. We would create a workaround. Instead of pausing everything again, We'd adjust our drills to include her in the training, indirectly. The next morning, the RV camp awoke to find a full-scale simulation unfolding around them. Officers rappelled from towers and cleared rooms in full gear, all while Karen and her friends sat in lawn chairs holding crystals and filming everything like it was a safari. We didn't engage them directly. We just moved around them, over and over. At one point, 2 officers used her picnic table as cover during a mock gunfight. Another team practiced smoke evacuations within 100 feet of her energy teepee. We called it Operation Exposure Therapy. But it wasn't until we started a simulated hostage rescue scenario that Karen finally snapped. A team stormed a nearby building with flashbangs and tactical shouting. Karen screamed in horror, thinking it was real. She shouted, "You're under arrest," and tried to run toward the officers, only to trip over a meditation mat and fall flat in the dirt. One of her cameras caught the whole thing. Within hours, the video had gone viral. But this time, the internet wasn't on her side. The comments were brutal. People called her the Queen of Delusion, the Trespass Yogi, and even America's most clueless camper. The morning started with a drone. Not one of ours. Not a training drone with flight clearance. This one was Karen's latest stunt, and she was piloting it barefoot from a yoga mat with a look of smug determination as if she were about to break a Pulitzer-winning story. The drone buzzed up over the treeline, hovered above the training course, and then spun in wide circles as she narrated in her fake broadcaster voice, saying things like "This is live footage of the unauthorized military occupation of sacred land in rural America." Her voice echoed faintly through the trees thanks to a portable Bluetooth speaker she had set up next to her mat. I stood next to James, arms crossed, watching the feed from our own surveillance monitors while slowly sipping my coffee. We both knew where this was heading. We had already informed her multiple times that aerial surveillance of a restricted training zone was a felony, but Karen didn't believe in the legality of anything she personally disagreed with. She insisted her drone was a peaceful observer and that the First Amendment covered her right to expose government secrets, even when the secrets were clearly scheduled drills coordinated with local and state authorities. She also claimed her drone was powered by ethical solar panels and therefore had clean moral airspace, which, somehow, she thought invalidated airspace laws entirely. We could have jammed the drone's signal immediately, but I decided to let it fly for a few more minutes. I had a reason. I knew the next phase of our training involved a controlled vehicle takedown simulation, a scenario that used realistic dummies and flash distraction devices. The sight of that unfolding from a bird's eye view might just give Karen the wake-up call she had so far managed to dodge with sheer delusion. The drone hovered near one of our decommissioned vehicles that was being rigged for the mock ambush. A team moved in silently, then executed the takedown with perfect timing. The noise was sharp and sudden. Karen gasped on her livestream, her camera wobbling wildly as she spun around shouting, "They just blew up a car. I repeat, they blew up a car on American soil." She ended the stream abruptly and ran toward her RV. Moments later, her drone dropped from the sky, either from signal interference or sheer panic. 2 hours later, she was back in front of our command post with a manila folder, sunglasses, and the kind of self-importance usually reserved for people who call the manager over napkin textures. She slapped the folder down on the folding table where James and I were reviewing drone footage and said, "I am filing a cease and desist against all current operations. This is an emergency injunction. Consider yourselves legally warned." I opened the folder and found a stack of badly printed papers, half of them with typos, one of them upside down, and all of them signed not by a legal authority, but by Karen herself. The documents cited the Universal Declaration of Spiritual Peace, a non-existent law she had invented to argue that aggressive sound frequencies disrupted her soul alignment. I stared at her, then at the papers, then back at her. "You typed these last night, didn't you?" I asked. "I typed them last night because no one else will stand up to you people," she replied with dramatic flair. "You've weaponized nature. You've militarized harmony. You've turned the wind into a weapon. James couldn't help it. He laughed. Not a little chuckle either, a full-on snort that turned into a coughing fit. Karen turned to him, utterly serious, and asked, "Do you think this is funny? The wind is alive. You're attacking life itself." That's when I told her the truth. The land she was squatting on wasn't just private. It was leased directly to us by the state under a federal training grant. That meant she wasn't just trespassing. She was interfering with sanctioned public safety exercises. She could be facing jail time. But she didn't flinch. She pulled out her phone and said that she was about to contact the governor's office. That she had friends in policy spaces. And then she did it. She made the call. She put it on speakerphone and recorded the entire thing, holding her phone high like a microphone. A board staffer answered, and Karen launched into her monologue about illegal operations, K-9 attacks, noise terrorism, and weaponized wind. The staffer said someone would look into it and hung up. Karen declared the call a victory. See, she told her camera, the state is on it now. The rest of the day passed in a strange limbo. Karen stayed near her RV, furiously editing her next viral post while glaring at every passing officer like they'd personally offended her chakras. She put up new signs, this time with phrases like "government goons go home" and "stop playing army." Meanwhile, we continued our training, increasingly using her presence as an unintentional prop in our scenarios. Officers practiced de-escalation drills near her picnic table. One group used her crystal arrangement as a simulated bomb threat site. Another team labeled her hammock the extraction zone and rappelled down from a tower nearby just to watch her panic. Things escalated when a new recruit accidentally tripped near her outdoor rug and knocked over her smoothie cooler. Karen shrieked like she'd been struck by lightning and shouted, "I will have your badge," to a trainee who didn't even have a badge yet. She marched to the command tent once again and announced that she would be staging a formal protest the next morning, complete with media invites and a prepared speech titled "Reclaiming Peace in Militarized America." That night, I met with the team. Enough was enough. Karen had taken over our field with her absurd delusions, endangered our staff, disrupted our operations, and now she was trying to draw even more attention to herself. But we still had one tool she hadn't anticipated: the law. With evidence of trespassing, obstruction, and unauthorized surveillance, we could initiate formal legal action. James contacted our legal counsel and prepared the proper document. The sheriff's office confirmed they'd escort her off the property the next morning. But then, something unexpected happened. Around midnight, a black SUV pulled up near the access road. Out stepped a man in a suit and a state ID badge. Not someone from the governor's office, someone from internal state affairs. Turns out, someone in the administration actually did see Karen's video and got concerned that we were operating outside of approved use. The agent asked questions, looked at our paperwork, inspected our permit. It was tense. Karen stood in the distance, watching the whole thing like a hawk, whispering to her livestream that this was the moment justice was arriving. But then the agent turned to her and asked to see her ID. She hesitated. He asked if she had permission to be on the property. She said she didn't need permission. That was all he needed. He informed her, politely but firmly, that she was trespassing on land leased for state-sanctioned law enforcement training and that her presence constituted a legal violation of public safety protocols. The strange peace that returned to Zone 9 after Karen's exit didn't last long. While her RV had finally left our grounds and her protest garden had been dismantled by volunteers who wanted nothing to do with her anymore, the scent of absurdity still lingered in the air like the aftermath of a bad prank. I just started to reset our training schedule when James burst into the command trailer holding a tablet and wearing an expression that was somewhere between disbelief and exhaustion. He didn't even say anything at first. He just turned the screen to face me. There, playing at full volume, was Karen's newest masterpiece, an overproduced 10-minute exposé filled with dramatic slow motion, black and white clips of her crying beside her fallen wind chimes, and captions that read things like "displaced by state violence" and "my RV was my sanctuary." But the cherry on top was her final line, spoken directly to the camera with tear-glossed eyes. "They thought they silenced me. But I've already bought land across the street, and I'm not going anywhere." I leaned back slowly in my chair and stared at the wall for a full 10 seconds, wondering if the world had finally gone completely insane. Bought land? Across the street? That couldn't be real. But sure enough, when James pulled up the latest county records, there it was. A tiny 1-acre plot, technically zoned for agricultural buffer use, sitting just beyond the southern fence line of Zone 9. It was a useless stretch of thorny brush and rocky soil, but to Karen, it was a front-row seat to her favorite reality show, Us. She'd renamed it in her post as Peace Watch Base Camp and announced that it would be the new headquarters for her Citizen Accountability Operation. Within 48 hours, she was back. Not on our land this time, but close enough to be a nuisance. She parked a new RV. This one plastered with hand-painted slogans and mounted with a giant rainbow windsock, just over the property line. She erected a flagpole with her own made-up emblem, which looked like a sun drawn by a toddler. Her platform was clear: surveillance, exposure, resistance. She even attached a wooden sign to the fence facing our facility that read, "The eyes are always watching." That week was the beginning of what James dubbed the Peace Patrol era. Every day, like clockwork, Karen would climb onto the roof of her RV with binoculars, a notebook, and a flask of what I can only assume was some sort of fermented root tea. She documented everything: when our vehicles entered and exited, when K9s barked, when drills involved smoke or loudspeaker commands. She interpreted it all as aggression and labeled it tactical harassment. But the part that really tested us came when she brought in her own recruit. She called them peace correspondents, but in reality, they were just a bunch of burned-out online followers who saw an opportunity to camp for free and stir chaos. They wore mismatched uniforms, robes, hiking gear, and in one case, a cape, and carried plastic walkie-talkies, pretending they were patrolling the area for violations. One guy even had a clipboard and asked our officers if they'd like to debrief emotionally after the exercises. We ignored them at first. Legally, they were within their rights to exist on their side of the fence. But they weren't content with that. They started flying kites over our boundary, each one bearing a message like "demilitarized nature" or "peace over protocol." One day, Karen released biodegradable balloons with glitter-filled messages inside. Most of them landed harmlessly in the brush. One landed directly in our training yard and exploded in a cloud of lavender-scented sparkles right as a tactical drill was in progress. The trainee leading the simulation thought it was a distraction device and yelled for cover. The chaos that followed was part comedy, part disaster. That was the tipping point. We couldn't allow these stunts to jeopardize safety anymore. We initiated a quiet but thorough legal review. Turns out, Karen's little plot of land had strict zoning regulations. No permanent structures. No business operations. No large gatherings without municipal approval. And no media or surveillance without a waiver from the local zoning board. We compiled every infraction. Her illegal fence post installation. Her RV power line connected to a nearby irrigation box. Her use of amplified sound. Her self-declared security force. We submitted it all in one neat, fact-stuffed report. Meanwhile, we prepared a response of our own, not through lawyers but through training. Every year we host a regional tactical demonstration day, where local law enforcement, emergency services, and civilian agencies come together for cooperative exercises and public displays. This year, we bumped the schedule up. We called in everyone: tactical teams, fire marshals, air support, crowd control units. We dubbed it Operation Full Spectrum. Karen had no idea what was coming. The morning of the demonstration, our gate was lined with police cruisers, training vans, emergency ambulances, and reporters. Karen, predictably, rolled out a new speech. She filmed herself declaring that the machine was back in motion, but that she was undeterred. She wore a sash that read, "Field Journalist," and paced in front of her fence with her phone pointed toward the compound. Then the first helicopter passed overhead. Her mouth dropped open. 2 SWAT units rappelled from a tower as a mobile K-9 team began a high-intensity exercise. Sirens flared, coordinated drills unfolded in real time, and an armored vehicle rolled down the path. It was all sanctioned, all public, all legal. Karen panicked. She started yelling that we were escalating violence. She called her peace correspondents to action, but half of them had left after realizing there were no free vegan snacks. She tried shouting at one of the SWAT officers to identify himself on camera. He waved politely, then asked her to stop standing on a cinder block for safety reasons. But the real twist came when a reporter from a local news station approached her. She thought it was her moment, her big interview. But instead, the reporter asked her about the ongoing zoning violations, the online backlash to her fake legal claims, and the recent footage showing her interfering with authorized training. Her confidence cracked. She stammered, accused the reporter of being a plant, and abruptly ended the recording. The footage aired that night. But it wasn't about us. It was about her. Karen, the delusional trespasser who mistook a tactical training facility for a camping ground, then tried to establish a surveillance base next door. The segment included drone shots of her windsock, interviews with zoning officials, and even a comment from the county commissioner, who stated on record, "We're reviewing all violations and appropriate action will follow." Within 72 hours, she was served. A full citation list. Orders to vacate the plot. Fines pending for multiple breaches. Her RV's water hookup was flagged. Her compost toilet didn't meet code. Her DIY flagpole violated vertical clearance laws. She tried one last livestream, standing in front of the flagpole as if it were the barricade of some noble last stand. But it was too late. The comments weren't with her. They were against her. One viewer wrote, "You didn't stand for peace. You squatted on other people's work." The weeks that followed Karen's final retreat felt surreal, like the calm after a hurricane that nobody saw coming but everyone felt in their bones. Zone 9 returned to normal, or at least the version of normal that involved daily tactical drills, canine bite work, and the occasional simulated vehicle takedown in the middle of the wood. The land felt different without the constant echo of Karen's voice claiming spiritual persecution or her drone buzzing overhead like a mosquito of misplaced justice. But we didn't let our guard down. No one trusted silence anymore. Everyone knew that with people like Karen, it was never truly over. It was just delayed. James had started a new morning ritual of checking social media tags to make sure we weren't being featured in another viral exposé. One morning, he strolled in holding a phone and said, "You're going to want to see this." It was a new video. Karen again. This time, she wasn't crying or ranting. She was smiling. Too calmly. Behind her was a warehouse, and in the caption she had written, "New location. Same mission. Watch what happens next." She had found a new venue, a private indoor space just outside of town, and was now advertising urban peace readiness training. It was a parody of our operations, marketed as non-violent drills for civilian resistance to domestic militarization. She had a sign-up form, a Patreon link, and a new website where she described herself as a whistleblower-turned-wellness educator. It would have been laughable if not for the fact that people were actually signing up. We recognized a few names from the RV circus she had camped with. The same crowd that called themselves truth seekers and spiritual tacticians. She had recruited them, given them matching bandanas, and created fake credentials for something she dubbed the People's Peace Corps. They had uniforms now. Homemade, of course. But still, there was coordination. A mission. A schedule. At first we debated ignoring it. Let her stage her theatrical drills in abandoned warehouses. Let her pretend to run extraction missions with foam swords and plastic megaphones. But it stopped being funny when one of her new trainees, got hurt trying to rappel off a scaffolding and ended up in the ER. The hospital staff had to call us because the injured man claimed he was tactically affiliated with Zone 9 and needed clearance to share his recovery status with the press. That was the final straw. Now her games weren't just disruptive. They were dangerous. We contacted legal again, but this time it wasn't about trespassing. It was about impersonation, false affiliations, and safety violations. Our legal counsel compiled the evidence. Video clips of Karen misrepresenting her activities as law enforcement adjacent. Screenshots of her claiming she was previously trained in tactical philosophy at Zone 9, which was so absurd we thought it was satire at first. But satire doesn't result in injured people or misinformation campaigns that confuse the public about real first responder work. The sheriff's office coordinated with city officials to investigate the warehouse. What they found confirmed everything. No proper permits, no insurance, no structural inspections. Worse, they were selling tickets to the sessions, charging people to engage in drills that were completely unregulated. Karen was running an unlicensed paramilitary camp under the banner of peace, claiming legal immunity under some self-created doctrine she called nonviolent assertive reclamation. It didn't take long before the place was shut down. When the news hit, Karen tried to spin it as political persecution. She did a live stream from the back of her RV where she claimed they were being raided because they dared to speak truth to power. But unlike last time, no one bought it. Her former followers began turning on her. People posted receipts, exposing her for charging extra fees for enlightenment certifications, and offering homemade herbal supplements labeled Combat Stress Detox Elixir, that turned out to be nothing more than flavored water with lavender drop. One of her former group members leaked internal messages showing Karen had been coaching them to provoke confrontations at police events so they could film the responses and edit them into anti-government propaganda. The backlash was swift. Donations dried up. Social media platforms began flagging her content. Her website was reported for misinformation. And yet, despite all of this, Karen still refused to take any responsibility. She announced one final protest, a march for mindful resistance that would begin at the edge of Zone 9 and move symbolically along the boundary, retracing the steps of spiritual trauma. She declared it would be peaceful but emotionally loud. She invited everyone, but almost no one showed up. The few who did stood awkwardly beside her while she banged a singing bowl and recited a speech filled with invented legal phrases and vague cosmic threats. She carried a staff made from driftwood with colored ribbons and chanted about sovereignty of soul space. It was the most ridiculous parade of nonsense I'd ever seen. But it still wasn't harmless. She released another drone. Again. This one flew higher, trying to catch footage of our newest training module, a simulated high-risk hostage scenario inside a makeshift warehouse structure we'd built on the far end of the property. She tried to claim she was documenting environmental impact, despite the fact that her drone crashed into a power line and caused a minor blackout in a neighboring district. That was it. Karen had officially crossed the final boundary. That same evening, a team from the FAA visited her RV, accompanied by officers from local enforcement and representatives from the zoning department. She was cited for unauthorized drone use, interference with infrastructure, illegal protest without a permit, and violating multiple terms of her prior eviction warnings. But the biggest hit came when she was served a restraining order, not just for our property, but for any federal or state training facility in the region. She was officially banned from approaching any training zone, simulation site, or official police drill within the county for a minimum of 3 years. Karen live-streamed her reaction, naturally. She cried, accused the officers of hating peace, then pivoted mid-sentence to promoting a new book she'd self-published called From Campfire to Combat: One Woman's Journey Through Truth and Tyranny. It had 0 reviews and no visible sales. Her last few videos struggled to reach even a fraction of her previous audience. The people who once cheered her on were now commenting things like, "Please get help," and "This isn't activism, it's delusion."